G'day guys, this is Andrew Price here, coming at you all the way from Australia. So my apologies if my accent is a little bit funny and you can't understand me. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. That's where I'm from. I normally create tutorials for my website, blender01.com. However, today in this video, for the first time ever, I'm going to be creating a tutorial for 3D World magazine. So it's very exciting. I've never done this before, but I'm hoping you guys like it, and hoping we can have a little bit of fun. So, in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create this scene right here. So, kind of a desert-looking scene with some mountains in the background and stuff. The main focus for this tutorial is creating these rocks, because that's something a lot of people question. You know, how do you create large amounts of objects very, very quickly without having to place them by hand? So I'm going to show you guys how to do that in this video. We're going to be making use of particle systems. We're also going to throw some mountains in the background very quickly, do the sky as well, and then on top of that, we're also going to do some compositing towards the end of it. So yeah, I'm hoping that it will be enjoyable, and hopefully you can learn a couple of things, or else I'm really not doing my job, am I? So anyway, if you're playing along at home, and I do hope that you are, go ahead now and open up a new scene in Blender. If you don't have Blender, you can get it from blender.org. It's open source, so you don't have to pay anything. Go ahead and download it now. The one I'm using is blender0147, but they're all pretty much the same nowadays. Okay, so when you open up Blender, you should see pretty much a scene like this, a default cube. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to be modeling the rocks, okay? So we're actually going to model it based off this default cube right here. So what we're going to do is jump into edit mode right now. And first thing we need to do is move all of these vertices above that origin point right there. The origin point is that little dot in the center there. So yeah, the reason for that is that the rocks, when they're placed on the surface, they're going to be placed kind of at the base, being that origin point, so everything needs to be above it, or else they're going to be kind of half in the ground, if you know what I mean. Anyway, the easiest place to make sure it's properly placed above it is to just hit G, then Z, and then 1, okay? And that's going to place it like that. Okay, now, as we model this rock here, it doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to look perfect. It's a low poly rock, and it really does need to be low poly because we're going to be creating thousands of these. So if you can try and keep it to just the square, just the cube shape, like not add any more vertices, then that's going to be better than if you try and create a high poly, realistic looking rock. Anyway, so I've created one right there. So I'm now just going to duplicate that by hitting Shift D. And now I'm just going to just make it a little bit different. Okay, so just a little bit different to the other one. Okay, let's move that one down. All right, duplicate it again. Might move this one up a bit. That one up. And flatten it as well. Alright, happy with that one. I'm going to duplicate it again. You can actually create however many of these you want. Basically, what we're going to be doing is putting all of these rocks into a group, and then that group is basically going to be distributed across the plane. So don't be scared about creating too many of them, because it's just going to it's just going to pick from the rocks randomly, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to put a little loop cut here, just one. That's by hitting Control R, if you're wondering. Yeah, so I'm just to give it a little bit of a different look to the others. And I might as well create one more as well. So I think I said in the magazine version just to create 3 or 4, but you can create as many as you want. And I'm going to flatten it. Cool. All right, so once you're happy with your selection of low poly rocks, next thing you need to do is select all of them and then hit Control G. And what that's done, you can see it's highlighted green now. What that's doing is it's put them all into a group. And if you press T, you can actually name the group. So I'm going to call it rocks. Okay. All right, now the next thing you need to do, and this is important, is you need to select all the rocks and you need to rotate it by 90 degrees. And that's important because when we distribute them across the plane, I'm not sure why, but kind of it needs to be rotated by 90 degrees like that, just so that you can randomize the rotation once it's on the plane. And that's pretty much the only way to do it, as far as I know. So yeah, once you've got that, you can go ahead and move it to another layer because you don't really need it anymore. Okay, so now we've modeled the rocks. Now we're going to create the ground. So, yeah, actually, why not? Let's go ahead and save it. I didn't mean to hit that button, but yeah, let's go ahead, save it now. Because Blender is sometimes prone to crashing. All right, so create the ground. We're just going to add a plane, okay, and we're going to scale it upwards, okay. I'm going to scale it to around, that's N, by the way, to bring up this little transform thing here. Just somewhere around the 11 scaled mark, okay, so something like that is fine. And now I'm going to subdivide it 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then if you bring up the toolbar by hitting T, you can also increase the fractal amount. So if I just somewhere around 15 like that, and that's just giving it kind of randomized surface, obviously. And also, we're going to, in this toolbar here, enable smooth shading so that it now appears all smooth. Awesome. I'm going to quickly position the camera front onto the plane. So if you select the camera, then hit Control-Alt number pad 0. It's going to snap the camera to that location. Okay. And I'm just rotating and then hitting X, just like that, so it rotates up and down, like so. Okay, so it's looking pretty good so far. All right, so now to distribute the rocks. So with the plane selected, go ahead and jump to the particle system now and click the plus button to create a new particle system. And we're actually going to be creating 3 particle systems, so we need to make sure we label them so we don't get mixed up. So I'm going to call it small, okay? And you have to label both of them for some reason because they're not linked. And now we're going to change the type to hair, and then we're going to click advanced. And that's going to give us more options to play around with. And first thing I want to do is increase the number of particles to 100,000. So just add 2 zeros, okay? And that's probably going to slow down your preview there because it's trying to display all 100,000 particles. So to make it so you can move around a lot quicker in Blender, if you go down to the display options, if you type in 5, that means it's going to display 5% of the total number of particles. So that's really important. Okay, cool. Now, to change these hairs here into the actual rock objects, it's underneath the render settings here. Currently, it's set to path. We're going to change that to group. And you might have guessed, in the drop-down box here, we're going to select rocks. Okay. So, as you can see, the rocks are looking pretty big so far. So if you go to the physics here and just turn down the size, we're going to change this to a 0.01. Now we're going to create multiple particle systems afterwards, which are going to be different sizes. But this one is, going to be 0.01, really, really small. And I'm also going to set the randomized size to 0.9, okay? Normally I set it to 1, but that can also mean that some of them show up as really, really tiny little specks. So if you make it 0.9, at least they're not totally small. Okay, awesome. Now, one other thing to note is that the rocks aren't actually rotated. Like if you look at it from the top-down view, you can see some, like this one and this one here, they're rotated exactly the same. And basically that means in the final render, it may look noticeable to people that they're just duplicates and they're not randomized enough. So to make sure that they're rotated randomly, in here in the rotation settings, I'm going to go to this random setting here and I'm going to increase that all the way to 1. Okay, and that means that they've now all randomized properly, so that rotated properly, I mean. And if for some reason that doesn't work properly, it's probably because you haven't rotated these rocks here, okay? So just as an example, this is by default, you know, where you would normally leave an object. This is what it would look like if you don't rotate it, where they're kind of like half sticking out and jagged edge, and it just looks awful. So yeah, just remember, rotate it. Bing. Okay, cool. I'm pretty sure, just checking everything. Yep, okay, well that's it for that particle system. Now we're going to create another one. And to save time, of course, we're just going to use the previous particle system, but you need to click that little button there, number 2, and that's going to make it a single user. Okay, now this particle system is going to be called medium. And first thing we're going to do is reduce the number of particles to 20,000, 20,000, and increase the size of it to 0.02, and that's pretty much it. Going to create another particle system now. Again, doing it the same way. Select a previous one. And I'm going to call this one, you might have guessed, large. Living large. The number of particles I'm going to use are 200, so a really small amount. But the size of them are going to be quite big. I'm going to make it 0.05. Actually, no, I think it's 0.08, I think, actually. Quite big, indeed. In fact, just so I can see them, I'm going to set the display all the way up to 100. Okay, so they're quite huge, actually, aren't they? If you're not happy with the way the particles are placed currently in your scene, you can just go up to the seed, and you can click through the seeds to find one so that you don't have these big rocks directly in front of the camera. I'm just going to move it around like that. I might also make this 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, depending on your scene. But yeah, something like that should be fine. Awesome. Alright, so if we were to render this right now, we should get a really boring looking render. It's going to look pretty awful. Yeah. Haven't really got much dynamic lighting going on at all. Okay, so it's we've created the rocks. They're looking good. They're displayed or distributed across the plane. Now we're going to get into the rest of the scene. First and foremost, we're going to do the lighting. So select the default lamp right here. And we're going to change it to a sun lamp. Okay, like that. And I'm going to rotate it so that it's in the background like that. And then rotate it about something like that, I think should be fine. I'm going to make it a nice kind of warm orangey color and set the energy to 3. So quite bright looking. But that's because the lighting is from behind, so kind of need to make it powerful so that you can see it a bit better. Awesome.